Hey, it's Metal Dave here, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, and welcome to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. Today, we are going to talk about the hottest band in the land, soon to be the hottest band in the world. Of course, I'm talking about Kiss. We are specifically getting into Kiss Alive and Kiss Alive 2, the two live albums the band put out during the 70s. Considered milestones, considered a massive influence on a bunch of rock and rollers over the generations. And we'll get into all that in just a bit. But first, as usual, Jason, what's going on? You got any music-related news to share? What's up?
Oh, too much pressure on music-related news. These intros to these things end up just being show and tell for me. You know that. I have been, a little bit of home improvement, getting ready for summer, and I'm looking forward to basically COVID numbers going down and hopefully playing some shows by the end of the year. There's still no bag and still no cat to let out of it yet. So, other than that, I wanted to share something that I'm excited about getting into, and that is a fast ride out of here.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's the Pete Way biography, if you will.
Yep.
And I read a couple of excerpts, just kind of thumbed through it, and holy crap.
It's great.
Well, so you have this and you've read it already?
I think Ginchy loaned it to me. Somebody loaned it to me, and I read it, and it was fantastic. So
yeah, it doesn't look like it's too long of a read. Under 300 pages, and I'm totally looking forward to it. The excerpts I saw in here where basically there's some smack talking about Phil. And I was like, I got to stop right now. They're talking crap about the lead singer in here. It's like, I need to see what led up to that,
Yeah, it's a great read. Obviously, Pete lived a pretty hectic lifestyle, I guess you could say. And there's a lot of interesting stuff in there that people tend to forget about him, apart from UFO. His involvement, I think he produced the very first Twisted Sister record.
That's right.
He was a founding member of Fastway, hence the name Fastway. Although
I'm seeing this like all things collide here when I think of Fastway. That must have been Fast Eddie and Pete Way hanging out, because Fast Eddie's involved in Twisted Sister as well.
Is he? Yeah. Well,
he played some solos with them. He was involved.
Yeah.
So in the making of Fastway, I totally believe that they were hanging out with Twisted Sister around the same time. There's some connections going on. Man, we're starting to talk about Twisted Sister a lot on Talk Louder.
Well, they're a big part of our collections, right?
Well, yeah, and Dee Snider is just a badass, and it's the year of Dee Snider right now. He just had a birthday. His birthday, ladies and gentlemen, is the Ides of March. It should be easy for you to remember, and it's not too late for you to send Dee a happy birthday, happy belated message.
Happy
right now. Go do it right now, because we're taping this. I don't have to wait for you.
Happy twisted birthday.
Yeah.
What
about you? What's going on with you?
I caught an episode of, I know this has been out for some time, but I've never seen it before. I finally caught an episode of that Brian Johnson television show where it's called Brian Johnson, A Life on the Road. And I've only seen one episode, and I'm under the impression that because Brian is such a car geek, that the show kind of has an element of cars, but then it quickly expands into basically him interviewing his fellow rock stars and other musicians and stuff like that. And I saw an episode just the other day where he spent some time with Dave Grohl, and it was really well done. I mean, I've got an immense amount of respect for Dave Grohl. I just love him as a person and as an artist and a musician. And of course, Brian is, a god among men, So An hour of those two chit chatting together was, was perfect for me. And the show was really well done, really well put together. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to look into some other episodes. There was a couple takeaways from the Dave Grohl episode that really made me smile. Dave was talking about his very first gig ever. He played at a nursing home, and his band did a cover of the Rolling Stones song, Time is on Your Side. And
Nice.
then he realized after the fact the cruel irony of that song title, because of course in a nursing home, time is on no one's side. So he
Wow.
thought, after the fact, he thought that the choice of songs might have been a little inappropriate. But yeah,
Well,
that
they didn't do brown sugar, so they're okay.
yeah, I guess it could always be worse, right?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that was a funny little anecdote. And then there was a bit where Dave is talking about, that Foo Fighters gig a couple years ago where he tumbled off the stage and broke his leg on the second song of the set. And it's some overseas gig. I want to say Sweden, but I could be wrong. But it's an overseas gig. It's massive, of course, because it's a Foo Fighters show. Second song, he trips over a cable, falls off the stage, about 11, 12-foot drop, breaks his leg. Uh, he requests a microphone. They bring it down to him. He's got a team of medics around him. He gets on the mic and he tells the crowd, I've broken my leg and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. And I'm really sorry and blah, blah, blah. And then a minute later, he goes, you know what? I bet I could do this show if I just sit down. So you guys get me on stage, put me in a chair, and I'm going to try and do the show sitting down. And the medic that's one of the medics that's tending to him says, if I let go of your ankle, your leg is going to be in way worse shape than it is right now. And Grohl says, well, then you're going to need to come up on that stage with me. And so the guy did, and they propped him up in a chair, and there's a medic holding his leg, and Dave's got the guitar in his lap, and the mic is dropped down into his, into his lap, and he did as much. I don't know if he did the whole show, but he soldiered on. And I just thought it was funny that he told the medic, well, then you're coming up there with me because I'm doing
Well,
the show.
well, the medic, the medic. I'm not saying that it would have been a good idea to just wrap the ankle in duct tape, but that's what duct tape is for.
Yeah.
So if the medic, he just, I mean, I think that it's great for a story that the medic was involved and came up there and had the utmost importance of holding his bones together, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But for an hour, for what, 90 minutes, he's sitting there holding the leg, and I bet it would have turned into a comedy show. I bet Dave in between songs. All right, for this next song. Oh, wait, hold on a minute. All right. Hey, dude, can I get you a drink of water or something?
Yeah. I mean, I don't
Would
know.
have been great.
Like I said, it wasn't clear if the show lasted the duration of the intended time or if he just soldiered on through a few songs and then ultimately pulled the plug. But I just got a kick out of the fact that he was willing to do the show. And if it takes bringing the medic up on stage with him, then so be it. Because Dave was like, you know, all these people came all this way to this gig. And then he said, and I came all this way for this gig. And I'm still functional. I just don't have a leg, So if I could do the show without it, I'll do it without it. But anyway, the bigger picture here is the Brian Johnson show. I saw the Dave Grohl episode. It was really entertaining, and I look forward to watching more episodes.
What's the name of that show?
I think it's called Brian Johnson: A Life on the Road.
Okay. All right. I have seen parts of that show with different people on it, and I don't know if it's always a musician.
I don't know that it is either.
Yeah, I think that sometimes it's, I don't know, but I know he did one with Lars, and I saw some snippets of that. It's not on a channel that I believe I get. I'm gonna have to download a damn app to watch that.
The only reason I found it, and you all know what a caveman I am when it comes to technology, I stumbled on it on YouTube. So I guess this stuff is starting to trickle out on YouTube.
Okay, well, that would save things because I have YouTube on my TV. I can watch it. Yeah.
you could find it. I think the credit on YouTube went back to AXS TV or Access
Yeah.
TV or the
Yeah.
network, whatever you call it.
Yep. Yep.
So that was probably the original source, but now it's starting to make its way onto YouTube. And anyway, I stumbled on it and really enjoyed it. So props to Brian Johnson. It was a great way to spend an hour. This is going to be a good one. The hottest band in the world, Kiss.
Oh wait, can we do that again? Okay. Kiss. No, wait, no, hold on, my guitar fell off. I want you to start with this because, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm holding source material. I mean, I have these records, both of these Alive. That's what we're talking about is Kiss Alive and Kiss Alive 2.
Yeah, yeah.
To just underline that again, but I want you. I'm holding both of these records on the bulky ass CDs that I have here. I want you to start. Just go with your first initial. When did you first hear Kiss Alive, and how did it make you feel?
Yeah. First, let me set this up a little better. We did an episode early on in the podcast about live albums, and we purposely said at the top of that episode that we were going to exclude Kiss Alive and Kiss Alive 2 because we felt that those two albums deserved their own show. So here we are today dedicating the entire show to Kiss Alive and Kiss Alive 2 and the importance and the impact that those albums had, not only on us, but on generations of musicians that came afterwards, and also, people that ended up giving us more great music thanks to being inspired by Kiss, and specifically those two records.
Yes.
So my first recollection of Kiss Alive was I was living in Maryland at the time, and I was probably about 14 years old. And I was at school. I had a friend at school named Marty, and I should remember his last name because he turned me on to Kiss Alive, and I can't remember it for the life of me right now. But I do remember his name was Marty. He was an Oakland Raiders fan. He used to wear Raiders jerseys to school, so I was drawn to him, and we were buddies. And he brought the Kiss Alive vinyl to school one day, and this is back in a time when you had the boxy record player where you unlatched the lid and you flipped over the lid and you put the record on and the speaker was built into the box, one of the invisible record player type things.
Yeah, you were 14. That's the kind of record player you have when you're 13.
Well, it wasn't mine. It was the school. So we're at the school.
Yeah.
He used to bring it to school. And I don't remember if we were skipping recess or if we chose to skip lunch, but one way or another, we used to gather, me and him and a couple other guys used to sit around this record player in school on school time and listen to Kiss Alive. And I remember seeing it and hearing it and just looking at the album cover, and I was done. That was it, man. I was a rock and roller from that point forward. It was like nothing I'd ever seen, nothing I ever heard. The visuals were just over the top. The sound coming off even that one little boxy speaker in that cheap little record player at the school, it just sounded amazing, man. And that was my introduction to Kiss Alive, and I'll never forget it. How about you?
Well, I think I want to say Jared, who's behind the scenes right now listening, I want to say that I've heard him say just in passing or maybe in interviews and stuff that it was the album cover alone of Kiss Alive that blew his mind and made him just, I got to do that. That's what I'm going to do. And he can correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say that was it. That was the one. It was the gateway drug.
Yes.
Right? Yes. Yeah. And that's definitely going to be something that comes up in this, quite a bit. Now, I remember where I was, Jared just texted me, he goes, yep. So I was right. So there you go. By the way, before we go any further, I want to mention here we go, Twisted Sister again. Jared sent a thing to us earlier. I want to throw a shout out to AJ Pero. Today is his death day. He died 6 years ago today, March 20th, and he was a powerhouse. Twisted Sister would not have been the band we know and love without him. So for all Twisted Sister fans and all just kick-ass rock and roll and heavy metal drummers, he was very, very, very good and an underrated drummer. So I just want to throw some beautiful light out to him and his family and to guys in Twisted Sister.
Yeah, well, you may remember I specifically mentioned him in our episode on drummers because of all the things you just said. I always felt that he was underrated, and he was definitely a beast of a drummer, and he definitely drove Twisted Sister. And if you're driving Twisted Sister, you've got big balls, man.
Yeah, I mean, he could have been, he was like a Mickey D kind of a drummer. Yeah, he was exactly like that. He played a lot like Mickey D, maybe a mixture of Mickey D and like Eric Singer.
Yeah.
You know, super old school heavy metal drummer. Anyway, AJ Pero today, March 20th. So I was at a neighborhood friend's house. And my friend's name was Ronnie and his older brother's name was Wayne. And we were and I think they shared a room, and they had a small record player, and I don't remember if it was no, I think it was on. I think we were listening to it. And same scenario. I don't remember the stereo being very kick-ass. You know, I think it was just like a box with a speaker, you know, with a turntable in it, you know.
Yeah.
And it's what I had at home too when I was that young. And I remember I was young. Because I was a full-blown Kiss freak. And called that by many of my peers by 76. And this came out in 75.
Right.
Before it came out right before Destroyer.
Correct.
So, or I know it was recorded in 75. It says 75 on here.
It was released in 75 too.
Okay. Just making sure. Yeah. And I he's like, have you heard this? And I'm like, I hear it, and I'm going, whoa. And I pick up the album cover, and that was it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, I could elaborate. I could be way more colorful. I could tell you my blood was boiling, not in like, you know, what people say, you know, my blood was boiling because I was angry. I was having
the best day ever.
Some kind of conniption, you know. I was having some sort of emotional reaction.
Yeah,
and it's the truth. And you know, I turned it over and saw the track listing, and I didn't know any of the songs. I'm being truthful here. So here you go. I was 10 years old in 75, and it was brand new. So I was 10 or maybe 11 years old. Okay. So I didn't know any of the songs. I had to go backwards as a fan and pick up records prior.
Yeah.
But listen, I got there as fast as I could. So when you think about it, it's 75 when this came out. You know, 76 I'll throw in just because I really do think I was closer to like 11.
Yeah.
And my birthday's in March, so that would make sense. And it gave it a little time for it to reach me.
Yeah.
Little did I know it was trying to reach me, and boy, it reached me, right? It was making its way to me. So yeah, without taking any more time, I went backwards from there, and I couldn't tell you what song it was. I don't know if it was track 1, Deuce, you know, or if I even heard the intro, you wanted the best, you got the best. I really don't know. we'll get into Alive 2. I find it very interesting that Alive 2 came out, you know, only like a year or two later. So they went from being the best band in the land to the best band in the world in just a couple of years, which I
Yeah,
find fascinating.
yeah. Well,
That's a joke, by the way, you know, just
well, it actually it's not really a joke because I mean, Kiss had 3 albums out when Alive was released. The first 3 studio albums were basically considered flops, and Alive is what saved them. It not only saved their career, it saved the record label Casablanca. 'Cause
yeah, let me interrupt for a second. Your interview or interviews with Gene Simmons, the man himself,
yeah,
confirming all of this stuff to you, which I mean, some of this stuff I take for granted, but not everybody listening is even half the Kiss fan that we are. They might
yeah,
have one Kiss album or something, right? So,
yeah.
um,
And if you
yeah,
don't have
carry
one,
on.
I hope it's Alive.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, so you were talking about the space of basically 2 years going from the hottest band in the land to the hottest band in the world. Well, the reality is the first 3 albums tanked, and Alive saved Kiss's career and saved the record label at the same time. And you got to remember, as you know, we've had this discussion before. Bands in the '70s were putting out 2 albums a year. So by '77, Kiss has Destroyer, Rock and Roll Over, and Love Gun under their belt. So 2 years
Exactly.
later, they've got 3 more studio albums under their belt, and those albums were gigantic. So
You
yeah, they
could
were the hottest band in
you,
the world.
you could say they were killing it by then,
Yeah,
totally killing it.
so two years later, they were the hottest band in the world instead of the land. And you mentioned earlier that the album was a gateway uh, to you and me as well. And in the course of my interviews with various people over the year, that's the common denominator. I've talked to Phil Anselmo, I've talked to Charlie Benante. I've read interviews with Sebastian Bach, who's probably the biggest Kiss freak on the planet. Interviews with Kim Thiel from Soundgarden. They all say that I did an interview with Kirk Hammett, and he said the same thing. He said what you just said. It was the cover. I saw the album cover, and I was gone.
Yeah.
And so
Well, you know who else? You know who else said that? And this is kind of an interesting. I find this fascinating. Is in a lot of like, you know, sort of, you know, hardcore metal like Pantera and Slayer. You know, real, you know, thrash metal and you know, black metal people and things like that. I think that it's interesting to me because his fascination with hardcore and speed, you know, drummers who play fast, hardcore drummers,
yeah,
is Dave Lombardo. In an interview with you, you ask him what inspired you. He says Kiss Alive. He says the drum solo inspired him, and he just started playing. Well, he also mentions Judas Priest, and he just started playing all the songs double time.
yeah,
You know, living after midnight's going boom, cat, boom, boom, cat. He's going put that, you know,
yeah,
he's like churning and burning the tempos. But yes, it's the same thing that someone who's you wouldn't even think of being influenced by this record coming out just like opening the vein and just saying, listen,
right.
this changed my life.
Yeah, another guy that is a huge Kiss fan that, along the same topic is Mike McCready from Pearl Jam. You wouldn't necessarily think Pearl Jam was influenced by Kiss, but because they don't sound like Kiss, but that doesn't mean that they weren't a massive part of his childhood or a part of his growing up and a part of his influence and maybe how uh, influenced his style of play or whatever. But Mike McCready is a huge Ace Frehley Kiss fan, and I think that's what we're talking about today. The impact of this album was so far-reaching that it didn't just influence future rock and rollers. Like you could see a Sebastian Bach, but there was no such thing as Pantera type music or Slayer type music back then. So these guys took it and moved on. And I'm glad you brought up the drums because we all know now we're all like grown-ups talking about Santa Claus at this point when it comes to live albums, but we all know
Yes.
I didn't just spoil something for you, did I?
Not at all.
I thought
Not at all.
I thought I saw a tear coming out of your eye.
No, some of us still believe in Santa Claus, but
Okay, I don't want to be the one to break the news, but
carry on.
um,
I'll get over it.
yeah, we all know that live albums are doctored after the fact and whatnot. But the one thing about Kiss Alive that is well reported, and Peter Criss has told me this in an interview that I did with him, and I think Gene said the same thing. On the Alive record, the only thing that wasn't doctored was Peter's drums. So the drum tracks they're real. Those are live drum tracks, and then all the other stuff was tweaked here and there. And I read an interview with Paul Stanley that made so much sense to me. You know, a lot of bands maybe get criticized or used to get criticized. I think it's become accepted that live albums are doctored out of necessity now. But I think there was a time when people were starting to find out that they weren't truly live. They were like, "Oh, we've been ripped off, we've been had." But Paul Stanley made an interesting point in an interview that I read, and he said back then, if you listen to a live album, you never heard the audience until the end of the song. And what Kiss was trying to accomplish with Kiss Alive was they wanted you to feel like you were at the concert. And obviously, when you're in the audience at the concert, you hear the crowd ebb and flow, and you hear the rise in the volume, and you feel the explosions coming off the stage. He wanted you to feel immersed in the experience. And it wasn't just some kind of audience track that was tacked on to the end of the song. And he makes a very valid point because not only did they accomplish that goal, but he's right. You listen to that record and you do feel like you're in the arena with the band and with the crowd. And that's the beauty of it. So if they had to doctor it to give me that listening experience, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I've made live records, whether they be official releases or just to have as just backup for B-sides or whatever. And sometimes there's cringy moments.
Yeah.
Sometimes you hear there be a cringy moment, and it only makes sense by just like a professional standard to fix that one dot that's making it cringy. Well, everything's great except for these little places that just sound like I stepped on a cat,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's worth it. It's worth it for the very little time it takes to punch that in and just kind of doctor that out,
Yeah.
But I think that it's important for fans to actually know that does happen.
Oh yeah, I think everybody knows at this point that secret is long out. It used to be one of the most best kept secrets in the music industry, and then people just started getting wise to it, and the internet made it possible to share information quicker and more widely. And it's no secret now. If you're still believing that a live album is truly live, then you're expecting Santa Claus on December 25th.
Yeah, I think it's Watching You. You can hear the crowd, the volume of the crowd crescendo up, and I think it's a fader. It's an engineer turning that track up, and then you hear the guitar come in, and if you listen now with the intel we have now, if you listen now, you can almost hear how like perfect that riff sounds. It's very clean. There's not a whole lot of amp noise or anything like that. And so there might be a couple of other places in the record, but that's a moment where it just sounds too clean to me. I'm not complaining when I say that either, because I love Watching You. I love that song.
Yeah.
So, the fact that that all of the drums are. Let's talk about Peter Criss for just a moment, because I've heard Paul Stanley say it. When he was good, he was kick ass.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but when he was bad, it was hard to deal with.
Yeah.
When he wasn't on top of his game, he was wearing it on his sleeve, and it affected his playing tremendously, and it was almost unbearable. He was unbearable.
Yeah.
But then when he was on top of his game, when he was good, he could hang with anyone. And that's really that's either hot or cold. There's no warm, right?
Yeah.
Kind of a review, but he must have been really hot for a long time. And this is if all of the drums on this record are truly live, he killed it.
Yeah. And it's it was told to me firsthand, and it's been widely reported ever since. And it's funny because people tend to pick on Peter and sometimes Ace as being the sloppy guys in the band or whatever. But if Peter's drums are the one and only thing on that record that were salvaged and kept intact as they were played, then that's huge kudos to him and his performances. Yes. Yeah. Quick little bit of trivia. Do you know who it was that did the intro? You wanted the best, you got it, the hottest band in the land, Kiss.
I just always, I don't know. I know this stuff is out there on the internet, but I don't want to know who Santa Claus is. I don't want you to tell me who Santa Claus is. But I was always impressed with the tone and the swagger of whoever that was. And I always thought in the back of my mind that it could have been Gene.
Nope. It is a guy named J.R. Smallings, who was Kiss's original road manager. And he was a black guy. And
that explains to me how it's, that sounds kind of strange, but I always thought that it might have been a black guy because he sounds a little bit street, and he's got wanted the best. He's got some soul,
and he's got
thank God.
He's got some swagger. That announcement is like, we're here to do business, brothers and sisters, and we're about to kick your ass. And
he's testifying. He's testifying something right there, and thank God he did.
That intro is as familiar as someone shouting "Freebird," in my opinion. You know what I mean? It's got it's that immortal. Much love to J.R. Smallings. He just passed away a couple years ago, and I asked Gene during an interview one time because I always wanted to know who was the guy whose voice is that, because I was pretty sure it wasn't anybody in the band. They wouldn't introduce themselves. So I wanted to know who's this mystery person that's got this line, this introduction that's, immortal. It's going to live forever. I want to know, who is it? And it was a guy named J.R. Smallings. And
he killed it.
Yeah, he did. And
he kind of changed the world. You know what I mean? When you kind of think he's part of the reason, right?
Yeah. Well, he introed the album that gave us Skid Row and Pantera and Anthrax. And,
forget about it. Yeah.
So, it takes some credit there, JR.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. Another thing before we leave Kiss Alive and move on to Kiss Alive 2, I wanted to say I have always been super, super jealous of the two guys on the back of the album cover holding up the Kiss banner.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. Before we hit record, we were talking about these guys, which I always thought were girls.
No.
Okay. Now I might get hate mail for that. I doubt it. I don't think so. I think your comment to me is thinking they were girls were, hey dude, it was the 70s. Right. I don't even know really what that means, but I just thought they were girls. I didn't, they were these little skinny human beings that were obviously there to rock. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. Androgyny was, especially back then, it was, the only thing different about really what was happening in fashion was the length of hair, right?
Yeah.
So the girls' hair looked like the guys' hair. Maybe that's why.
No, you're right, because both those guys have the parted down the middle, feathered back, long hair,
But
and
but so did Joni and Chachi.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Christy McNichol, Leaf Garrett,
Yeah,
the Brady Bunch. They
you're
all had that.
losing
So
yourself, bro.
that's that's okay. That's all right. Young man.
No, I just always was fascinated by those guys, and I was like, oh my God, how cool would that be? Because this album is going to live forever and ever and ever and ever. And not only is it going to live forever, it's going to be cited as one of the most important, greatest hard rock, heavy metal records of all time. And smack on the back. And I'm not talking about, I'm not educating anybody here, but I love the fact that it is a featured photo of those two guys. They're not part of a collage. They don't have to get out the magnifying glass and tell their grandchildren, this is me over here in the lower right hand corner behind this other big guy that's in front of me. It is like, bam, we're holding this banner. It's me and my bro, and we are the featured artwork on the back of Kiss Alive, dude. So cool. And
Yeah, I didn't I say something earlier? This is going to sound like, I need to be trampled by horses or something, but uh uh I didn't I comment, it's like I thought maybe I need to be slapped, but Kiss was they were opening for someone at that show that photo was taken.
not that I'm aware. I think that was.
Okay, that I want fact checkers, and my fact checkers are people who watch the show who comment. So I want people to comment with true or false. The back cover of Kiss Alive, which they don't have it actually on this. Here it is right here. Yeah, these look like girls to me.
Nah,
So
those were
so
70s dudes, man.
yeah, I want to say that Kiss was opening for someone when this photo was taken, and so you guys can kill me later, or
I don't think so.
okay.
I asked Gene in an interview about that photo specifically, and he said, he didn't indicate that they were opening for anyone. Of course, Gene never would. But I mean, at that point, Kiss was, doing pretty good business. That was the whole point of doing the live record. They were doing great, in as far as concert tickets were concerned. They just weren't selling studio records. Um, and obviously these guys are pretty close to the front of the stage, and they're holding up a Kiss banner. And Gene said, I asked him about those guys, and he said, we had a photographer walking around the arena, and he saw those two guys with their homemade banner, and it was just a magical moment where those two guys sort of captured the sense of community that was taking place at Kiss concerts during that era. And so the photo was just a very random, it was not staged, unlike the cover photo. That photo on the back cover was not staged. It was just a photographer walking by, saw these guys, they stood up, they saw he had a camera, and they're like, dude, check us out with our banner. And the guy took the photo. And Gene told me that, those guys still show up at Kiss concerts wherever they live. I think they're in the Michigan area, Detroit, maybe. And they still show up, and the Kiss guys treat them to passes and all this sort of stuff. And one guy is now a doctor, and the other guy now is in real estate or whatever.
Well, of course, one's a doctor and one's in real estate. That's what people grow up to do.
Yeah.
They cut their hair.
Well, unless you're Sebastian Bach or Dimebag Darrell or or Charlie Benante or whatever, one of these other guys. And I wanted to add another little story that I got via an interview before we move on to Kiss Alive 2. Phil Anselmo, I was talking to him one time, and I asked him about what was the first album he remembered that knocked his socks off and turned him into a rock and roller. And he said, when I was a kid, there was a drugstore near my house that sold records. And I went there one day and I bought two records. And one of them was Kiss Alive, and the other one was Ted Nugent, Cat Scratch Fever.
Holy moly. Yeah. Those are grails.
And
Yeah.
he said, Kiss, of course, I was already in love with Kiss without even hearing the record, just because of the cover. Again, this is a very common theme we're hearing. And he listened to both of them, and it took him about, it took them months to get back to Ted Nugent. It was Kiss right away,
Yeah.
heavy rotation. And yeah, Phil Anselmo cites Kiss Alive as the album that changed his world. So a very common theme. I mean, it definitely changed my world, changed your world, and changed the world of a lot of guys and girls that went on to create music that we in turn love.
Yeah, it's not over. God, I'm trying to remember. I think it was something they did in 94 or 95, 90, I can't remember when it was. Maybe you know, Kiss did a sort of like a traveling museum acoustic set type of they were gearing up to put the makeup back on kind of thing, but they still had Eric Singer and Bruce Kulick playing. And I think it was in 95 before they started their tour with Ace and Peter.
Sounds right.
They had some of the dates they had Peter and Ace show up and do some tunes with them. This was acoustic. They were doing them in like hotel ballrooms and conference rooms and things like that. They'd set up the drum kit that you see on the cover here and costumes from this tour, etc. And where I'm going with it is I asked Gene where this bass was. This Gibson Grabber, and it looks like it's maroon with glitter. It's got like some kind of weird like dark red with glitter in the paint or something. And I've never seen another one like that. And for a while I was collecting these 70s Gibson Grabber basses.
I remember you playing one in Godzilla Motor Company.
Yeah, and I still have a couple of them, but
Yep.
I asked Gene that they were passing around the microphone, and I asked Gene where that bass that you're holding on Kiss Alive, and I think these guitars were props. I don't even think they were the guitars that they were playing live on stage. These were they just showed up from Gibson for the photo shoot or something.
I know the photo is staged. I don't know if the guitars are legit or not.
Yeah, there may be some nerd talk about this later. Hopefully there is on the comments. Yeah, on the comments. Hope there's some Kiss nerds who will unite and go in and crash our party and unveil every truth that we might be getting wrong here. And I really hope they do. But he said he had an answer. He said, I don't really know. Probably a warehouse somewhere. Next question. It was not even a thought,
Yeah.
But I was serious about the question.
Yeah. Well, let's also not forget that the packaging, of course, since you're talking about that cover photo, Kiss Alive, the packaging was as inviting as the music and the cover. I mean, it came with a booklet. It had the handwritten notes from each band member were on the inside sleeve. So, I mean, if you're a 14-year-old rock and roller back in the 70s, that package was just everything you could have ever wanted.
You're not wrong. There's like 16 songs on here. The personal notes from the band that were obviously propped up in an actual photograph taken of them, I thought was a very cool touch. I think that
they kind of revealed a little bit about the personality of each guy. And remember, back then, Kiss was very mysterious. So that was sort of those little handwritten notes on the inside of the sleeve kind of gave you a glimpse into their personality a little bit by the style of their tone and the words that they used and their handwriting and the little cartoons that they may have drawn or whatever. It was like another little clue into the world of Kiss because they were so mysterious at the time.
Yeah, I want to say they upped their game in Alive 2, and we'll get to that. As far as like little goodies inside.
Yeah.
I feel like they did up their game a little bit.
Well,
they were starting to they were starting to get I almost said greedy, but I think that they were starting to figure it out
Yeah,
as to how they needed to do this, because they are kind of like a circus, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You got demons and spacemen and you know, star children and
Pyro,
lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my, it's kind of a thing, right? They
yeah,
were on the yellow brick road, that is for sure.
yeah.
Now, I almost don't want to stop talking about Alive, but I feel like we should at this point. But
Yeah, let's,
before we move on, I just want to make note, and it's okay, we can keep rolling when I say Eddie Kramer. We should do one of our producer spotlights and do Eddie Kramer, because holy moly,
yeah,
we can't. That's a can of worms that we will open later, but
yeah,
he was once again, he's like the fifth member of every band I can, it's in
yeah,
my collection. So
yeah. Um, yeah, let's move on to Kiss Alive 2. So we're talking,
moving on to Kiss Alive 2.
yeah, we're talking 2 years later. So Alive comes out in 75, saves Kiss's career, saves the record label. That whole tour was financed on their manager's personal credit card. And I mean that's how down to the wire they were. And they came roaring back. Alive was a huge success. And then came Destroyer, Rock and Roll Over, and Love Gun, which brings us to Kiss Alive 2. All three of those albums I just mentioned were huge sellers. I think Kiss was probably the biggest band on the planet during those years. Um, so, talk about Kiss Alive 2. Do you remember the first time you got your hands on that record?
You know, I don't I don't really have true like year or moment or memory of it. It was almost like uh from the time that I picked up Alive, I had picked up all three, and then I had the other I had Destroyer, Rock and Roll Over, and Love Gun, and then I had, you know what I mean? It was like I had a stack of Kiss records like this before Kiss Alive 2
Yeah,
was even an idea in my mind. I didn't know about it,
yeah,
right? So I didn't realize I was waiting for Kiss Alive 2 to come out until I saw it in the store.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I walked into it. I'm like, oh, I'll have that. You know, it was like a no-brainer, whether I knew it or not. But I absolutely, just real quick, the studio records that I just mentioned that lead them to give them a reason to to record shows from the Love Gun tour and put them out as Kiss Alive 2.
right.
Uh, those studio records blew my mind.
They're great. Yeah,
There's so many great moments. I think that they nailed, coming up with some sort of Peter Criss ballad to, to be up there with Beth.
yeah.
I think that the fact that Kiss Alive 2 had both of those songs included on it
Had
is another sort of like feather in the cap on how and who they're trying to sell to, as well as the hardcore rockers who like the faster songs and they like all the Gene songs with blood in them and stuff, blood and fire, right?
right.
Um,
I like the fact that that Kiss Alive 2, they made a conscious decision not to include any of the songs that were already offered on Kiss Alive. So, which is kind of unusual because most bands, especially Kiss, at that point had huge hits that they could have included on Kiss Alive 2, like Rock and Roll All Night is a prime example. But they kept each live recording very unique and exclusive to the albums leading up to it, and there was no overlap. and I thought that was great. And it didn't hurt that all three of those albums in both cases were just dynamite. So, you know, Kiss Alive really captures the first three records and does it really well, and breathes new life into them and adds some energy and excitement to them. And then with Kiss Alive 2, they're coming off the heels of this three album streak of greatness. So it's like, yeah, keep all those tracks on this album. And so I thought it was like great that they were very unique documents that sort of captured the three studio albums that preceded them, but there was no overlap. Obviously, the first one can't overlap the future one, but the future one could have overlapped the first one, and it didn't. And especially when you consider that Kiss Alive 2 had enough space to include a side four that was all studio tracks. They could have filled that up with Hotter Than Hell and Rock and Roll All Night and things like that. But they were very conscious about keeping it unique to the three albums that preceded Kiss Alive 2.
Yeah, so 15 live tracks and 5 studio tracks.
Yeah, yeah.
One of them being a cover, I believe.
Dave Clark 5.
Yeah, Any Way You Want It.
Yeah.
And I think that those songs are fun. And they also make you go, holy crap, these are not going to show up on anything else, I bet. These are songs that they've written. These could have been left. Some of these could have been left over from Love Gun.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the uncredited guitarist on much of that studio side of the record is Bob Kulick. So that makes me believe that those were not leftover tracks, because if they were leftovers, it'd be Ace, you know. The only song on that studio side that Ace has a hand in is Rocket Ride, and Rocket Ride is basically his song from start to finish. I think he plays all the instruments and he does the lead vocals. But the other three,
he didn't play drums. Ace don't play no drums, Dave.
Oh, he might not have done drum. Okay, might be bad there. But the point being that out of that studio side of the record, Ace really was only present for Rocket Ride, and the other tracks, Paul Stanley is single-handedly credited for the whole Dave Clark 5 tune, Any Way You Want It, and then the remaining 3 tracks or whatever it is Bob Kulick on guitar, which is interesting because his brother Bruce later on became the lead guitarist in Kiss. But
yeah, they were obviously secret family style with Kiss. So that's very cool and very important. Yeah. And a shout out to the memory of Bob Kulick while we're at it as well.
Yeah,
because he played he played with everyone.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in doing some research for this show, I learned, if you can trust Wikipedia, that all the live tracks on Kiss Alive 2 were basically pulled from live performances, as you would expect. But the song I Stole Your Love, which is one of my favorite Kiss songs, and I love it even more on Kiss Alive 2 because of the way it was presented in the live format. I read that it was actually recorded at soundcheck one day during that tour, and they dubbed in the audience. So it's not even a doctored live track that needed some help. It's a sound check in an empty arena.
Well, sound check is live, so it's live. Well, it's just not. It's with the doors are not open.
Yeah, good point. That's true.
Yeah,
good point. Yes. And then I also learned that I think I've learned this in recent times, but so prior to Kiss Alive 2 coming out, there was a decision made by management to do a live album at Budokan in Japan. And so they recorded some shows at that venue with the intention of putting out a Kiss Alive 2 record from Japan. And for whatever reasons, they thought the results weren't up to par, and they kind of shelved it. And then I think some of this stuff has been re-released ever since, but it basically sat in the vaults forever. But the version of Beth and was it I Want You? Yeah, Beth and I Want You are leftovers from the Japanese performance. So on Kiss Alive 2, you basically have most of it was recorded at the LA Forum,
That's
and
correct.
there was some other stuff recorded elsewhere. But I Stole Your Love is a sound check recording that had an audience dubbed in, and Beth and I Want You were leftovers from the abandoned Japanese live album that never came to light, and they were added to this record.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah, just some nerdy stuff because that's what we do.
I love the nerd stuff about all this. Now, well, it's kind of important to the memory of the record, which is obviously long lasting and important. Let's talk about packaging for a second.
Yeah,
So this looks very different from Kiss Alive.
yeah,
Very different.
yeah.
So there's a typeset logo that's purple and red, and it's faded from red down to purple.
It's awesome.
And it's beautiful. It's incredible. And then Alive 2 is big as hell, all capitals, and then it has the close-ups of the members. And I love these photos. These photos are amazing.
Yeah, I was just going to interrupt and say that might be the best photo of Gene I've ever seen. So
I've got some photos of Gene that rival this.
Yeah,
but this is real. This is a real photo of Gene. These others look like they were staged. The lighting is too perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have been just photo shoots where they got the lighting like really awesome and then snapped some promo shots. But Gene, that's obviously really live. That could have been during his bass solo. It could, who knows?
It's a great photo.
Oh yeah, that's one of the most tattooed photos of Gene's face that I've ever seen. People love this photo of Gene because it's real, and it captures where he is when he's in the correct gear, right?
It kind of captures everything we love about Gene. He's sweating, he's spitting blood, his eyes are rolled up into his head. He just looks demonic, and that's what we loved about Gene.
Well, I'll put two words on it: nothing nice.
Nothing nice.
It's nothing nice.
Yeah.
You see this picture, you go, holy crap, that's nothing nice. Ain't nothing nice going on with that guy right there, right?
Which is exactly the appeal.
That's what you want. Yeah, right. That's what you want. So that, I'm not going to say that's a bummer, because when I hold up, when I think about the cover of Kiss Alive, we've already covered what that photo alone can do.
Yeah.
This is a different aesthetic. This Kiss Alive 2 cover is a totally different aesthetic in my eyes.
Yeah.
And then the back cover is a little bit different. Alive 2's in gold, the logo is in red, and you get a close-up of those same four photos. If you have the vinyl, and vinyl's really the only way to go. It really is the only way to go when you're talking about photos. Thank you very much, Dave, for holding that up. I'm sure we'll get a slate of that. Can you do us all the favor, Dave, and open up that fucking gatefold? This is what I'm talking about, everybody. You can't fit that you cannot fit that on the front of the album cover. You cannot fit that, I'll say it again, on the front album cover.
Yeah.
Which is why they did that, right?
Yeah.
That's the difference.
The stage was a lot bigger.
Well, the band was a lot bigger.
Yeah.
As the intro would tell you, they went from land to world. They were a battleship as well as a tank. They were on the water as well as, instead of just coming to a couple of cities, they were finally global. Now, let's talk about this just for a second. This gives it some timeline. So Dave, I mean, I know when it came out. Tell everybody the first album came out what year? Studio. Kiss.
Studio album,
73.
73. I was going to say 73.
Okay. So 2 years later, Kiss Alive comes out. During that time, the 3 studio records. So the Kiss Alive record has one hit on it, and it's Rock and Roll All Night, which is on the 3rd studio record. Yet when you hear Kiss Alive on the radio or in the grocery store, yes, I said grocery store, you don't hear the studio version. You hear the live version, which is amazing to me.
Rock and roll.
Yeah, Rock and Roll All Night. The energy of it is perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
so they had already, by the time Kiss Alive is out, they've already recorded some of Destroyer. They're already working on Destroyer.
Yeah. Okay.
So Destroyer, then Rock and Roll Over, then Love Gun. 2 years go by, they release another live album, but by this time they are killing it. They are completely untouchable. Okay, that is in 77 that they release Kiss Alive 2, which is the record we're still kind of talking about right now. So let's count the years. So, hey, we're a brand new band. We're in clubs and small theaters and VFW halls and grandma's backyard and stuff, trying to get the makeup right and get the costumes right. And how are we going to clean this real leather? Oh, we need to make costumes that aren't real leather, that just look like leather so they don't smell like a dead cow every night, and blah, 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 blah. They're working on it, right? Yeah. They're trying to make plans to take over the world. Little do they know they are going to take over the world.
In 4 years. Less.
73 to, no, let's go all the way to Alive 2.
Okay.
73 to 77, and the mathematician is Metal Dave. Go. How many years?
4.
I can't believe it.
4 years. Yeah, they went from obscurity to the biggest arena attraction in the world in 4 years.
With when you count the 2 live albums, they've got how many records out? They've got 8 records out.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Bands put out 2 or 3, 2 albums a year, and sometimes 3 if you throw in a live album.
So in 4 years,
yeah,
I've got this many records. I've got a stack of Kiss records like this.
In 4 years, you arguably have every Kiss record you'll ever need.
Amen. Here, raise your glass. Raise your glass to that. Ching, ching. Yeah, hit the camera with that. Ding, 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 ding.
Now I will say that I did like some stuff beyond that, but I did preface that by saying arguably. So, but you make a really good point. From 73, the debut Kiss studio album, until 77, Kiss Alive 2, what we're talking about right now. I mean, they just absolutely took over the world, and they've got 6, 8 records out. That's crazy. That's crazy.
I don't know. I don't know what to say about what these guys did to me, other than they fucked my shit up.
Yeah. Well, I think that's safe to say. They did the same for me. I want to end with one more story that kind of parallels what we're saying right now. I remember doing that interview with Kirk Hammett and asking him about, kind of similar to what I asked Phil Anselmo, what album was the first one that blew you away, made you want to be a rock and roller, blah, blah, blah. And he said Kiss Alive. I'm going back to the first one now. And he said, I remember seeing that record and hearing the band, and he says, and I just assumed after that every band was like that. And then I saw Peter Frampton on TV and went, nope.
Right.
They're not all like Kiss,
Right.
Kiss was special, they were over the top in a big, big way. And it was like, this is not normal. This is like excess on top of excess. And I think that's what we're talking about today with this show. I mean, Kiss Alive and Kiss Alive 2, are two albums that really do the almost impossible task of capturing the vibe and the excess, and you almost feel the pyro when you listen to those records, you know. And whether they're doctored or not, I don't care. They're two of the greatest live albums of all time, and you have to have them in your collection.
Well, these guys. I'll say it now. They are, and they were, especially during these years, um, completely dedicated to making every effort humanly possible to blow your mind at a rock concert.
Yeah.
And I think that, you mentioned Peter Frampton. Peter Frampton Comes Alive is an excellent live record.
Yeah.
And it's excellent song crafting. And he had lots of hits. And everyone I know who had Kiss Alive had Peter Frampton Comes Alive.
Yeah.
But it was after the fact that they had Kiss Alive that they got Peter Frampton. Yeah. And the idea that Peter Frampton became a household name after Comes Alive exactly the same way Kiss did. Correct. Exactly the same way.
Yeah.
And so there's something to be said about what was going on with how important it was that these touring bands were drawing crowds because of the energy and the emotional value these concerts were giving people.
Yes. You could say the same about Cheap Trick. They were nobody until Budokan, and then boom. Same thing like you were talking about Rock and Roll All Night. When you hear Surrender on the radio, you don't hear the studio version. You hear the live version.
That's right. That's right.
So same thing. There was a lot going on in that time, and I know I took a dig at Peter Frampton by way of Kirk Hammett, but
no.
Love and respect to Peter Frampton.
Yeah, and I'm sure Kirk Hammett loves Peter Frampton too.
Yeah,
Peter Frampton is an excellent musician and songwriter, and he did it. He climbed to the top of the mountain and stayed there. One more thing about the packaging. Now you confirmed this. Am I mistaken that Kiss Alive had lick 'em and stick 'em tattoos in it? No.
Two. The second one had it.
I mean Kiss Alive 2. That's what I meant. Did I say just Kiss Alive? I meant Alive 2. I'm holding Alive 2.
Right. Alive 2 had the temporary tattoos. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And it just had and they were terrible looking. They were cartoony as hell.
Yeah.
I mean, we love them. Yeah. But yeah. And I don't remember if there was anything else on there. Maybe there was a logo. It was a little red and yellow logo that you could lick 'em and stick 'em temporary tattoo.
Yeah.
So it's all four faces and a logo. And maybe one more was on that sheet. It came in like an insert.
Yeah.
So a sheet.
It might have also included Paul and Peter's real tattoos. Like Paul had the rose on his shoulder, and Peter had the cat with the 13 or the lightning bolt or whatever.
Number 3 or whatever it is. Yeah.
I'm guessing, but
no, I think that you're right. I think that they probably started with the rose and because they were the only guys who had tattoos. Those two guys and Bon Scott were, and sailors and pirates were and criminals were the only people that had tattoos in rock and roll in the 70s, I guess.
Ace had one that was his name, and I don't know when he got it. He might have got it after Kiss Alive 2, but if he had it before Kiss Alive 2, they probably thought it was too shitty to put on because it was pretty bad.
Well, it was, I don't know. I've seen some bad. I have some bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I know what he means. So, but yeah, I think that we've covered these records quite well. There's a lot of moments and memories that are still clanging around in my soul and in my brain. But then there's a lot of them that I don't recall. But I'm telling you, there is something about these records that I smell and feel.
Yeah.
And that I will never forget.
Right. It comes back every time, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Same
Yeah.
here. If I drop that needle on the record, the excitement of discovering Kiss as a kid just comes roaring back to me, and that's a really magical moment, and not every album can do that. It takes a really special album to do that. And like you said, I remember where I was. I remember the smells. The excitement runs through me all over again. It transports me, and yeah. So big thanks to Kiss for
I I
not only
want to
those
I
two
I
albums.
want to I want to say thank you to Kiss, but I want to say thank you to Ronnie and Wayne Flores in my neighborhood for
Yeah,
buying Kiss Alive and turning me on to it, and really giving me the gasoline that, for the car that is my life
yeah,
of rock and roll music,
yeah,
which I continue to be a songwriter and a performer solely because of this record. I mean, there's a lot of other things that influence me as a musician and as a young music fan, but Kiss Alive was the reason it made me want, and that cover, right,
yeah,
made me really want to experience, you know,
yeah,
rock and roll.
yeah. Well, I think we've covered Kiss Alive and Kiss Alive 2, and I think the point here is that it really was, especially Kiss Alive, the gateway album for people of our age that were into rock and roll as a kids. This was the one that blew the dam wide open, blew the door off the hinges, and just made us go, "Oh my God!" And we're not alone. And that's the magic and the impact and the power of that record. Um, it influenced generations of musicians, and like I said, musicians that you and I have that look up to. We look up to them today. I mean, thank God we've got an Anthrax, and I love the Skid Row records, and I love the Soundgarden stuff. And if I wouldn't have that because I didn't have Kiss, then we'd be missing out on all that as well. So uh, just a huge, huge monumental record. Both of them actually, Kiss Alive and Kiss Alive 2. If you're a rock and roller, you have to have them in your collection, and I'm hoping you do. Let's move on to our shot of rock and roll. I was thinking about what to ask you for this episode, Shot of Rock and Roll, and I've always wanted to ask you, and I think people would be interested in knowing, how is it that you ended up on that metal show as an audience member and had a chance to stump the trunk, Eddie Trunk? Tell me a little
That
about that.
that's a good one. That's a good one because of the timing. Because we're, as I mentioned, top of the show, we're in March right now, and my birthday is March 18th, but that's also my true wedding anniversary. We were in Los Angeles. Uh, we on I think we landed on St. Patty's Day. That would have been the 17th, to arrive at a taping of that metal show via Jim Florentine. We is me and my wife.
Yeah,
We had rented.
your
Go ahead.
buddy Jim. Your buddies with Jim Florentine.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, and I had met Don a bunch of times as well. And Jim Florentine and Don Jameson had come out to see Broken Teeth play in New York a couple of times on the road, right? And so, but and I knew Jim. It's a long story, but I knew Jim. He came through town on a comedy tour through Austin, Texas, and he was on the morning show at KOBJ with Dale Dudley and all those guys. And it was like, I don't know. I don't listen to that show. It's like on at 7 a.m. I got better things to do at 7 a.m. than listen to these guys, make fun of people or whatever they do.
Yeah.
And Jim Florentine was on the show, and he was, "So it's your first time to Austin, Jim. What's your plans? What do you want to do when you get to Austin, Texas? And he's in Austin, Texas. He's like, "Well, it's my first time here, and I'm really bummed. I've been looking in the newspaper ads and stuff for music venues, and Broken Teeth is not playing. They're my they're my new favorite band and blah, 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 blah. And some friends of mine heard it and they called me and woke me up at like 7:45 a.m. And there's this dude on the radio talking about you right now. And so anyway, I hooked up with Jim later and we were friends and blah, blah, blah. So I'm in Los Angeles. It's March 17th. We have an address. We're going to the taping. I think Demetrius Bermudez, who actually has the same birthday as me, who also became ordained solely to marry me and Kate, my wife. So he was in our entourage.
Yeah.
So we're on our way to the studio to this taping of that metal show. So we get in and we're, we're in the stands. I wasn't necessarily a guest on. I wasn't a guest on the show.
Right.
Legitimately, I was not a guest on the show.
Right.
But to my surprise, pleasantly, they wrote me into the show as to someone who got to do a walk-on, and it's scripted. Not that's a surprise, but they gave me a question to ask that pertained to the show. The guests were guys from Styx and Vinnie Paul from Pantera. So
Stevens, correct?
Steve Stevens was the musical guest, right? They usually had a guitar guy up in the stands, doing a bunch of noodling in between commercial breaks and stuff. So whatever. And then DJ Will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So William Howell was there as well, and I've known William forever. So that's pretty much how that happened. And when the show was over, or when I did my little deal, they told me, Jim said pre-planned, he says, when they're kicking everybody out, I'm going to wave you over. I want you to do the photos, the big money shot at the end of the show that we always do for everyone to kind of trade around. And it's something that I think Eddie always did. And they just pulled whoever, they did a bro down, so they made sure, Kate stayed in and they pulled me on there. And that's how you see me in some photos floating around. I'm up there actually with the slotted guests and Steve Stevens, but I'm up there with Jim in those shots. And that's how that happened. Man, that's a good shot of rock and roll.
Well, so real quick, tell us the question. And
I don't know. I don't remember it. I think it was, I'm guessing, but I think it was, what were the names of the first 3 Pantera records without Philip or something like that.
Because I thought, I remember, I'm surprised to hear you say that the question was scripted, because when I heard it, I thought it was uniquely you. It was like something only you would come up with. But maybe they just tried to tailor the question to your personality, because it was kind of
it was about Pantera, though.
Maybe, I can't remember. Well, Vinnie Paul was a guest on the show, right? So yeah, maybe it was. I can't remember either, but
that's the point. Is I think that they script everything to make it tie in at least a little bit to who is asking the question, if they are a friend of the dudes, a friend of Wayne or Garth,
right?
And then they just kind of write, this one would be a good one for Jason. I think it was one they already had written out. So yeah.
Well, cool. That's a cool experience. And
it's interesting. And there's some pictures floating around somewhere, maybe on my Facebook, but we went to a book signing the day before. I think we went in the day before, and we went to the 16th. I think the night that we got there, we went down. Kate knew of a book signing that was happening from someone I had never heard the name of, but a Luke Carl.
Oh yeah.
Had a book out called something like, and we have it on the shelf over there, The Drunk Diet.
Okay.
Something like that. the drunk diet for drunks or something like that.
Yeah.
The drunk diet. And I had never heard of the guy, but turns out that Kate knew of him and that had read about him, and he's the ex of Lady Gaga, I believe, and has Lady Gaga actually, some of her materials actually inspired by him, their relationship. And very interesting because I am a Lady Gaga fan.
Yeah.
So I'm interested. And the guy's a total rocker.
Yeah.
And at that time I had no idea, but he was about to or had just started his show on Sirius on satellite radio.
Yep.
And then from then he's infamous at this point. But that was the first time that I met him, and at the book signing that we went to was right there on Sunset, I believe, in this tiny ass bookstore. There's only like 8 people in there. You know, it's everything you can imagine, little chairs, and he's up at a podium and he's talking about the book and everything.
Yeah.
And there's the promoters from Monsters of Rock Cruise, Larry and them. They were there sitting like 2 chairs ahead of me, and I'm going, man, that sure looks like the back of Larry's head. It sure looks like, and I'm staring, and I'm listening to Luke talk, and I'm going, man, I swear. So Larry turns around and sees me, and we had just been confirmed for the next cruise. So it was like this weird, I don't think he knew we were in LA. So
yeah,
that was, anyways, we went to the Rainbow right after, and Luke was there. So I'm hanging out with Luke Carl for the first time and just talking about rock and roll. And turns out he was a big Dangerous Toys fan. So made a new friend. So
yeah,
he's a good shot of rock and roll with a lot of information, Dave.
It's funny that you bring up Luke, because I don't know him personally, but I know he's pretty well known in the world of rock and roll broadcasting. And today, and for the past number of years, he's married to a girl that used to live here in Austin named Avery Allen.
That's exactly right. And they met at his book signing when he came through Austin.
Oh, well, there you go.
Just maybe a week later, a week after I met him, Avery met him. And I knew Avery. When I worked at South Austin Music, she was coming in looking for an amp and stuff. And she still has the amp that I sold her.
Yeah. I know her as being a local musician, and she worked at a bar downtown. And I knew her for a number of years, and we still stay in touch on Facebook, but I don't know her husband. I know who he is. But it's just interesting that you bring him up today too.
Yeah. The Applicators.
Yeah.
She was in the Applicators.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Well, they're in Nashville.
That's right. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Very cool. And they are really cool people, and they are a rock and roll couple for sure.
Yeah.
They have Les Pauls and Flying V's and Marshalls all over their house.
Well, I remember her as being a real sweetheart, so I'm sure that he's a nice guy too. If they're hooked up together.
He's great. He's very well spoken. He's super smart, and he just loves rock and roll. So he's a perfect guy to have a microphone in his face to tell stories and play music.
Good deal. All right, man. Well, let's wrap this one up for today, and we'll save my shot of rock and roll for another time. I think we've run long on Kiss because it's Kiss, the hottest band in the land. Yeah.
It's the land, and then the world. Before we go, do you know who did the intro on Kiss Alive 2?
I do.
Who is it?
A guy named, I'm going to murder his last name. His name was Eddie Belondes or something like that. And he was a security guy that worked for Kiss. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I did want to make the point that I didn't want people to think that J.R. Smallings did the intro on Alive 2 as well. He only did Alive 1. And I don't know how long he was in the Kiss family, but for a number of years. But he's not the guy that does the intro on Kiss Alive 2. That's a great question. So,
no, I can tell that it's 2 completely different people.
Yeah. So Kiss Alive, You Wanted the Best, You Got It, the hottest band in the land. is J.R. Smallings, and You Wanted the Best, You Got It, the hottest band in the world. Kiss on Alive 2 is Eddie Bellandes, I believe is how you say his name.
Close enough.
There
I'm sure he will. I'm sure he will love the lip service either way.
I think he passed away recently too, sadly. But yeah, there you go. Good question. I'm glad you brought that up because I had it on my list of notes and we kind of brushed right over it. But all right, man, that was great. Kiss Alive and Kiss Alive 2, two gigantic albums that kind of turned us into the people we are today, for better or worse.
Yeah, you got that right.
All right. Well, on behalf of myself, Metal Dave Glessner, and my co-host Jason McMaster, thank you for watching another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. And as always, please hit that subscribe button on YouTube. We'll talk to y'all next time. Thanks for listening.